"Dolores," said Mary Law, entering with me, past me, through me, the plump whore, and blinking and starting to fold very rapidly a white flannel blanket as she blinked. "Dolores, your pappy thinks you are getting letters from my boyfriend." "It's me," smugly tapping herself on the small gilt cross she wore, "gets them. And my pappy can parlez-vous as well as yours." She left the room. Dolores, so rosy and russet, lips freshly painted, hair brilliantly brushed, bare arms straightened out on neat coverlet, lay innocently beaming at me or nothing. On the bed table next to a paper napkin and a pencil, her topaz ring burned in the sun. "What gruesome funeral flowers," she said. "Thanks all the same, but do you mind very much cutting out the French? It annoys everybody." Back at the usual rush came the ripe young hussy, reeking of urine and garlic, with the desolate news, which her fair patient eagerly accepted, ignoring the sumptuously illustrated volumes I had brought. "My sister Anne," said Mary, topping information with afterthought, "works at the Ponderosa place." Poor Bluebeard. Those brutal brothers. "Est-ce que tu ne m'aimes plus, ma Carmen?" She never had. At the moment I knew my love was as hopeless as ever. And I also knew the two girls were conspirators, plotting in Basque or Zemphirian against my hopeless love. I shall go further, and say that Lo was playing a double game, since she was also fooling sentimental Mary, whom she had told, I suppose, that she wanted to dwell with her fun-loving young uncle, and not with cruel, melancholy me. And another nurse whom I never identified, and the village idiot who carted cots and coffins into the elevator, and the idiotic green lovebirds in a cage in the waiting room, all were in the plot, the sordid plot. I suppose Mary thought comedy father Professor Humboldt-Toldy was interfering with the romance between Dolores and her father substitute, roly-poly Romeo. For you were rather lardy, you know, Rom, despite all that snow and joy juice. My throat hurt. I stood swallowing at the window and stared at the mountains, at the romantic rock high up in the smiling, plotting sky. "My Carmen," I said. I used to call her that sometimes. "We shall leave this raw, sore town as soon as you get out of bed." "Incidentally, I want all my clothes," said the Gitinilla, humping up her knees and turning to another page. "Because really," I continued, "there is no point in staying here." "There's no point in staying anywhere," said Lolita. I lowered myself into a cretonne chair, and opening the attractive botanical work, attempted, in the fever-humming hush of the room, to identify my flowers. This proved impossible. Presently a musical bell softly sounded somewhere in the passage. I do not think they had more than a dozen patients. 3 or 4 were lunatics, as Lo had cheerfully informed me earlier, in that showplace of a hospital, and the staff had too much leisure. However, likewise for reasons of show, regulations were rigid. It is also true that I kept coming at the wrong hours. Not without a secret flow of dreamy malice, visionary Mary, next time it will be une belle dame tout en bleu floating through Roaring Gulch, plucked me by the sleeve to lead me out. I looked at her hand. It dropped. I was leaving voluntarily. Dolores Hayes reminded me to bring her next morning. She did not remember where the various things she wanted were. "Bring me," she cried, out of sight already, door on the move, closed. The new grey suitcase and mother's trunk. But by the next morning I was shivering and boozing and dying in the motel bed she had used for just a few minutes, and the best I could do under the circular and dilating circumstances was to send the 2 bags over with the widow's beau, a robust and kindly trucker. I imagined Lo displaying her treasures to Mary. No doubt I was a little delirious, and on the following day I was still vibration rather than solid, for when I looked out of the bathroom window at the adjacent lawn, I saw Dolly's beautiful young bicycle propped up there on its support, the graceful front wheel looking away from me as it always did, and a sparrow perched on the saddle. But it was the landlady's bike, and smiling a little and shaking my poor head over my fond fancies, I tottered back to my bed and lay as quiet as a saint. Saint, forsooth, while brown Dolores, on a patch of sunny green, with Sanchicha reading stories in a movie magazine, which was represented by numerous specimens wherever Dolores landed. And there was some great national celebration in town, judging by the firecrackers, veritable bombs that exploded all the time, and at 5 minutes to 2 p.m. I heard the sound of whistling lips nearing the half-open door of my cabin, and then a thump upon it. It was Big Frank. He remained framed in the open door, one hand on its jamb, leaning forward a little. Howdy. Nurse Law was on the telephone. She wanted to know, was I better and would I come today? At 20 paces, Frank used to look a mountain of health. At 5, as now, he was a ruddy mosaic of scars. Had been blown through a wall overseas. But despite nameless injuries, he was able to man a tremendous truck, fish, hunt, drink, and buoyantly dally with roadside ladies.